It is 6 p.m. in NYC, and it is a wonderful winter evening here, February 7th. I'm Sam Kimball from Crush Wine Experiences. Thank you so much for joining us on virtual day trip to wine country. We are here for a very special session presented by the New York Wine and Grape Foundation. We're here for Love is in the Wine, Romantic Rosé, Sparkling Delights, and Silky Reds. It's a virtual tasting session featuring 4 outstanding selections from 4 award-winning New York State wineries. We're going to sample the wines, learn about the wineries and their histories, and hear about the ways in which these selections can make your celebration even more special. We'll also discuss the 3 New York wine regions where these wines are made. Many of you already know, but New York is home to nearly 500 wineries, and the state is now the 3rd largest wine growing region in the United States. So we have a lot to discuss. Looking forward to diving into all of it. We are going to welcome everyone and thank you for joining. Welcome West Orange, New Jersey, Yardville, New Jersey, Knoxville, Tennessee. Love it. Finger Lakes. They're coming in. People are just logging in, and we'll keep it going here. Nancy from the North Shore of Long Island. I love it. Welcome, guys. Good evening, everybody. San Francisco, London. Haha. Excellent, excellent, excellent. All right. So speaking of wine regions, let's take a brief moment to look at the New York wine regions on a map, which has been provided kindness of the New York Wine and Grape Foundation. So bear with me one second. Wine region, the 3rd area that we're sourcing wine and one of our producers is based in is the Lake Ontario. And there's actually a wine trail, the Lake Ontario wine trail up there. And so Coloca Winery is up on Lake Ontario. And so we're definitely blessed with a real diversity of geographical location here. So just keeping it going. We're excited to be discussing wines with White Cliff Vineyard and Winery, Bully Hill Vineyards and Wagner Vineyards Estate Winery, both of which are in the Finger Lakes, and of course, Coloca Estate Winery, which is on Lake Ontario. The theme is Valentine's. Just what wines could you plan for a special Valentine's celebration? We've got some great choices to pick from. Our wines are from New York State, obviously. So let me back up one more minute before we jump in with the panel discussion and talk a little bit about New York State wines. New York State is not only the 3rd largest wine growing region in the country, but it is rich and diverse in terms of the fantastic wine growing areas where each and every bottle reflects diverse climates, soils, and topographies and terroir that make those bottles great. And right now, New York State wines are no longer sort of an afterthought in terms of wines coming out of the U.S. As we sit here in 2024, New York State wines are world-class. We aren't talking about the quaint wine growing regions that used to be sort of next door to the apple orchards in New York State. We're talking about wineries that are winning national and international awards. For example, a New York winery was named a Wine and Spirits magazine Top 100 not long ago. A New York winery was named to the Wine Spectator's Top 100 in the world. Finger Lakes wineries took home top honors at the New York Wine Classic competition of over 450 wineries. We've got wines now that are being featured on menus in fine dining establishments in Tokyo, in Japan. The bottom line is New York wines have ascended to the world stage and the major leagues of wine and are now grabbing the spotlight. And it's an exciting time to be in New York and be around these great producers, which I'm excited to share on the panel discussion with you tonight. We're going to meet key team members and winemakers at these 4 wineries that are contributing to this emergence of New York wines onto the world stage. And we're really going to be demonstrating the saying that is sometimes used in New York State: the quality is in the bottle. All of tonight's 4 selections are excellent examples of that. So I want to welcome everybody again. Thank you guys for tuning in. Please ask any questions or make any comments in the chat, and we'll answer chat questions as we go on the fly. This is an informal session, so it's meant to be interactive. Jump into the chat, ask a question, interrupt us. We'd love to hear any and all comments and questions. And if you would, I know some people have already, hit the chat right now and tell us where in the world you are logging in from. So this evening, we're going to travel to these 3 places within New York State: the Hudson Valley, the Finger Lakes wine region, and the Lake Ontario area. And we did take a look at the map. So I want to say, without further ado, let's bring in our guests. We have Yancy Stanforth Migliore, the co-owner of White Cliff Vineyard and Winery. We have Alex Jankowski, the vice president at Wagner Vineyard up on Seneca Lake. Both of these wineries I've just mentioned are part of the Sustainable Wine Growing Program at the New York Wine and Grape Foundation. We've got Will King, who is the brand ambassador for Bully Hill Vineyards on Keuka Lake. And we've got Dr. Chris Coloca, the founder and owner of Coloca Estate Winery, Sustainable Wine Growing Program member up on Lake Ontario. Welcome, you guys. It is so much fun having you here. And it's going to be great to talk about these wines in New York State. So Yancy, I want to start with you. You're in the Hudson Valley. What inspired you and your husband to start White Cliff Vineyard and Winery?
Well, my husband had a background in both chemistry and agriculture, and had 18 acres of land, which he had to decide what to do with it over time. And he actually toyed with the idea of making cheese and having cows, and I'm grateful that instead we went with grapes and wine. But it's a beautiful, beautiful location here, and that's a lot of what inspired us. It's a great place for tasting rum, and there's a terrific agricultural heritage to our area.
Yeah, you guys have a particularly stunning photograph, which I want to share with the audience on your website. Tell us a little bit about where you are here, because there's this huge cliff and it's quite picturesque.
Yeah, well, that is the Shawangunk Ridge. Not a name we were going to put on our wine. It's technically kind of the northernmost end of the Appalachians. And if you get up on top, beyond it, you see the Catskills. It's one of the things that makes us who we are, because people love to come and sit at the tasting room and taste wine and look at that view. On the downside, the cold air does drop down off the ridge and seek the low spots, which happens to be our vineyard. Another feature of that cliff is that that view precisely is on our label and in our name, White Cliff. And we happened to meet, my husband and I, because of rock climbing there. It's some of the best rock climbing in the Northeast.
Yeah, no, it's an amazing location. I've had the pleasure of being there many times, as you know. And what varietals do you grow at the vineyard?
We have, I think, over 20 that we've grown in one quantity or another. We've done a lot of experimental growing. We also have very significantly expanded in the last, starting in 2015, to a warmer site that's an hour north of here. So we have a second vineyard and second tasting room that's on the banks of the Hudson River, which makes it definitely a warmer site than where we are here. There we're, we put all of our experience of growing here in the gunks into what we selected to grow up in Hudson. Here, more and more, we're growing cold hardy varietals like Saval Blanc, Vidal Blanc, which we love. The Chardonnay grapes that went into the Blanc de Blanc that we're going to taste were grown here. And Gamay Noir is something we've done very well with here, the Beaujolais grape. We're growing a lot of Cabernet Franc. Some here and lots more in Hudson, and are very dedicated to that grape as a great one for this region. And the list goes on.
No, it's great. I mean, you guys have done some really interesting ventures into grapes that some people haven't heard of, and you've done an amazing job. And some of those wines have won awards, which is really exciting. Chris, in one part of your life, you're in the medical industry. How did you get into founding your winery up on Lake Ontario?
Yeah, so I grew up in Oswego, New York, and went to Ithaca College, driving through those beautiful Finger Lakes back and forth to home and back to college. Went on to chiropractic college and became a research scientist, finished a PhD, and I invented a chiropractic device that's sold all around the world. And while I was in the midst of doing some wine collecting, I got to travel to all these different places, from Argentina, Mendoza, to South Africa, to the beautiful rolling hills of Tuscany, and of course Alsace in France. Fell in love with those types of wines, and thought, man, wouldn't it be incredible as a dream to one day have my own winery? And I've been blessed to be able to do that back here, close to my hometown, just 20 minutes from where I grew up, right on Lake Ontario.
Yeah, I mean, you guys are surrounded by, you're sort of in, it looks like some coves and inlets of the lake, because you kind of have a surround of the water there. Is that right?
Well, yeah, and what you're seeing right here is Fairhaven Bay, which is an inlet of Lake Ontario. So we get this beautiful lake effect that really mitigates the terroir. And we'll talk a bit more about that, I think, as we go. But it's just these glacial till lakes. They provide just, they're dug by glaciers. We've got this fantastic minerality from the soils, and it's the breezes off the lake are something that are very special, that help keep disease away and help us grow grapes. So it's a new kind of fledgling area, Lake Ontario. We're just north of the Finger Lakes, but it's said that the lake effect that the Finger Lakes enjoys, the majority of it also comes from Lake Ontario.
And how many wineries are on the Lake Ontario wine trail there?
Yeah, so all in, we have 8 participating wineries, cideries, distilleries. So we're very new, we're very young, but I think we're seeing more and more growth that'll continue to happen here into the future.
No, it's really exciting. Alex, Wagner Vineyards is up on Seneca Lake, and beautiful location. You guys make a real wide portfolio of wines, and a bunch of award winners in recent years. I mean, I think wine of the year in New York State a couple of years ago. What is on your list there at the winery for like a quintessential wine from your portfolio for Valentine's Day?
Yeah, it has to be a list, because when you make 35 wines, you cannot just pick one. And that's a luxury that we have here. All of our wines are estate grown fruit. We are 100% estate bottled. We grow about 20 different varieties. But the ones for me on Valentine's, I saw somebody earlier in the chat mention Riesling as well as Fizz. Well, we make a sparkling Riesling. So that is for sure one that I'll be having with me a week from now. And then also our dry rosé, we make a close to bone dry rosé from 100% Cabernet Franc, which is phenomenal. We actually have a sale going on right now on our website about that. And then I'll mention, the Meritage, the wine we'll be drinking later today, which is about as full-bodied as you get out here in the Finger Lakes, and a wine that, really kind of changed my mind about what red wine can be from this region. Obviously, the only thing consistent about our growing seasons are the inconsistencies, but when you get those really great warm vintages, the Bordeaux reds can really ripen beautifully. So I would say those three: sparkling Riesling, dry rosé, and then the Meritage, which we'll be tasting later.
Yeah, and you guys, as you can see on the map here, you're smack dab in the middle, dead center of the Finger Lakes wine country, on the largest lake. I believe Seneca is the largest lake. Is that right?
It is the deepest. So Cayuga is slightly longer, but at its deepest, Cayuga is about 450 feet deep, whereas Seneca is 640 feet at its deepest, which is actually adjacent to our farm. The last time that Seneca Lake froze over was in 1912. So John Wagner, our owner, said his grandma used to tell stories about ice skating across the lake, but not something any of us have been able to enjoy, nor would I think would want to risk. But yeah.
Yeah, no, it's well, we're going to get into in a minute. We're going to get into talking about the microclimate that you guys enjoy there and how it has a particular effect on the flavor characteristics of the wines and the grape growing. Will, Bully Hill's history on Cayuga Lake dates back 100+ years, pre-prohibition, when Walter Taylor's grandfather started the Taylor Wine Company on the very same plot of land where Bully Hill is now.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about the arc of that history and, bring us to the present. What makes Bully Hill's winemaking special?
Yeah, it's a really fascinating story. So, our founder, Walter S. Taylor, he started the winery essentially in 1970. But if we go back to 1880, his grandfather, Walter Taylor the First, we'll call him, founded the Taylor Wine Company on the same site, the same buildings that Bully Hill occupy. He was a master cooper. He came from the Binghamton area because he had heard that there was a wine, juice, table grape industry starting here. So he came here specifically to establish a cooper shop initially. Very shortly after he got here, him and his father decided to found the Taylor Wine Company. They founded the Taylor Wine Company on the same site, which is now Bully Hill Vineyards. If anybody's ever been to Bully Hill or been to the restaurant is actually the original site, the original building of the original Taylor Wine Company. As time went on, Taylor started to grow exponentially. They eventually became the largest winery on the East Coast in the 20th century, focusing on port, sherry, and of course sparkling wine, which pre 1980 was the Finger Lakes kind of crown jewel, was sparkling wine. The Taylors merged with Great Western, which is also known as the Pleasant Valley Wine Company. Walter Taylor and his father managed the Great Western branch of Taylor's. Eventually there was a big falling out, a little bit too much of a backstory to get into right now. But Walter had always had this plan that he was going to start his own winery on the very same site that the Taylor Wine Company was founded. And that is essentially the genesis of Bully Hill. Walter kind of going back to his roots, going back to a family-owned winery, getting hands-on and using the very same vineyards that his grandfather started his winery with to kind of reinvigorate the family's legacy with Bully Hill.
No, it's a great story. And I mean, your location here is, obviously spectacular, but it's
Yeah.
also quintessential Finger Lakes with that long sloping down to
Yeah. We sit at about we're at about 1,100 feet at the highest point you see there.
Wow.
It's very high up. Our wines are a reflection of that. A lot of these vineyards, these used to be Native American varieties like Concord, Isabella, Delaware, Ives. Walter was a big proponent of French American hybrids. So when he came in, around 1958, Grayton, his father, and Walter S. Taylor decided to replant that entire about 100 acres with the French American hybrids, things like Chancellor, Sayval, Vidal, Ravat, and they pushed the Finger Lakes in a new direction, away from some of the native varieties and into French American hybrids.
Yeah, super. There.
Yeah.
It's a history rich tradition in your area, and both wineries have had a tremendous impact. All right, excellent. We are going to talk terroir. So Yancey, I want to throw it to you and have you tell us a little bit about the Hudson Valley and what makes it so good for wine growing. And I'm going to bring up the map of the Hudson Valley, and we'll talk about that. But I'm curious, like how you see it both in both your locations, the Shawangunk location and also your vineyards on the river itself.
I did just email you a picture of the Hudson Vineyard, which is worth seeing because
Excellent.
it does sort of summon up that classic view we were just looking at of vines sloping down to a body of water, which is so classic. Because the effect of the water makes our region less extremely cold, that vineyard in particular. The Hudson Valley, we're sort of in the middle in a lot of ways between the Long Island wineries and the Finger Lakes wineries. We are the closest to New York City, by the way. We have some extreme temperatures because we are very much a continental climate. We're not maritime like they are in Long Island. So like the Finger Lakes, it's very site specific here. You have to have a good site on the river for it to be ideal. And certainly for vinifera, for more delicate, cold sensitive grapes. Over the 40 years we've been growing grapes, we have experienced a couple of dire extreme cold events, never to be forgotten.
I think the first time I visited you at the winery was during one of those polar vortex weeks a few years ago, and it was like -5 that day.
Yeah. No, the real nightmare is going back a number of years. May have been about that time where we went to like 20 below. It was hideous. But one of the things when we hit 20 years old, and we're at 25 years old this year, I thought about, can we put our history into a single word? And I'd say it's determination, because yeah, you get a lot of ups and downs, but interestingly, our region has a lot of growing degree days. We stack up very well to every other part of the state in terms of, how many days you can ripen vines. It's warm enough, there's enough sunlight to ripen the grapes, rather. There's a newsletter put out in harvest season by Cornell that's sort of monitoring the development of grapes statewide. And our Hudson site was the one representing the Hudson Valley this past fall. And there were times that we were in the lead, had the grapes ripening fastest. There's the site. Yeah.
Yeah, so you're really like it's not dissimilar locationally to some of the wineries in the Finger Lakes, which are, down by water.
Or the Rhone region, which I just visited in November. I have a picture that looks almost just like that.
And what you're further north, it's warmer because of the water in the river. How far north are you? What town is this in?
It's the town of Hudson. So, it's substantially closer to Albany, but it's all about the heat sink, the warming effect of the river. And the Hudson is an estuary, it's tidal. Water comes up from the Atlantic, and it has a significant warming effect. And we also have a place is steeply sloped site and the cold air drains off and the warm air rises up off the river, and it gives us much more resistance to freezing out than most other sites in our region.
Yeah, it's great. I can't wait to get up. I haven't been up to your North River location yet, so I'm looking forward to it. Alex, Wagner is in the Finger Lakes AVA on Seneca Lake, as we mentioned. What is it about the microclimate and the terroir, specifically where you're located, that makes the wine there so good?
Yeah, so for us, all 240 acres of our grapes are located on the east side of Seneca Lake. And as I mentioned earlier, we are adjacent to the deepest part of the lake, which plays a major role as well, because there is a prevailing northwest wind that comes across the region. So basically, that wind will hit that body of water just before it comes over our farm. So in the winter, because that body of water is continuously moving and it doesn't freeze over, the water is warmer than the air, than the wind that's coming. So it will actually warm up that wind a couple of degrees just before it comes over our farm, which makes a massive difference when you're talking about the degrees that you typically see in this region in the winter. Just a couple degrees makes a massive difference. And what's interesting is in the summer, it actually does the opposite. So that water will be cooler than the air that's coming, than the wind. So it'll actually cool down that wind just before it comes over our farm. And that helps a lot with preserving acidity. So we talk a lot about, Riesling, aromatic whites, but even in reds, Cabernet Franc and others, that presence of acidity is what lifts it up, makes it so refreshing, gives it, that age worthiness to it. And then also, because we're on the east side compared to the west, there's this fun little back and forth between those on the west side and those on the east side. Folks on the west side, their sun comes up a little bit earlier, so it burns off the fog layer a little bit sooner than it does for us. You see varieties like Gruner Veltliner over on that side, which you don't see as much over on our side. But what we get is a much longer sun exposure in the afternoon. There's hills over on the west side that cover up the sun earlier for folks on the west side. So on the east side, that couple hours of sunlight added is what helps us grow varieties such as Cabernet Sauvignon and Merlot, which are so dependent on sunlight, as we've learned over the years, 5 generations of growing grapes here at Wagner Vineyards. So we don't get as much sunlight as other regions, so we have to maximize the sunlight that we do get. So being on the east side of the lake really helps with that. And then a lot of other things that we've done in the vineyard in terms of exposing the fruit through our trellis system, through our canopy management and things like that, really helps us maximize that sunlight that we do get. And we're able then to grow grapes like Cabernet Sauvignon and Merlot, which, only a couple locations in the region really are able to, because they get that sun exposure.
And how many wineries are on the east side of Seneca versus the west?
I'd say you see more on the east side. I would say probably 25 on the east side versus maybe 15 to 20 on the west side. It seems like there's a new one popping up pretty often. And obviously there's no shortage of breweries and cideries and distilleries now in the region. We were the second to open on Seneca Lake, so it's wild now to look back at photos of what it was like back then. But there's still plenty more to be had as well. So I think, as interest in the region just continues to grow, you're going to see more and more places pop up.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting. I mean, I'm fascinated with the differences between just the two sides of the lake, and as you describe how the sunlight works and affects the eastern shore. Will, with Bully Hill, you guys are on Cuca Lake. Not that far away, but
Yeah.
you know, certainly a different microclimate. What is it about
Definitely.
that area that is unique and that you guys leverage to make your wines?
Yeah, and real quickly, I'll mention that Cuca Lake actually drains into Seneca. Kind of a fascinating, like, geological fact. At its north point in Penn it actually, the Cuca Lake itself being a smaller lake, you can see it up there. Penn to Dresden is where it drains into Seneca. So we are connected, and there used to be able to there used to be a canal there essentially, so you could make your way by boat to Seneca from Cuca. But talking about Cuca Lake specifically and what makes that unique, I think it's Cuca Lake has a maximum depth of around 190 feet. Typically, the depth is around 100 feet. It's only about a half mile wide at any given point, never really much wider than that. But what you see on Cuca, which is different from Seneca, is you see dramatic slopes. You see the vineyards are planted on very steep hills that gives you, specifically on our side, on the west side, that gives you maximum airflow and maximum air drainage. This past spring was a good example. Our site is very high up, 1,100 feet, and we had this terrible frost in the spring, and our vineyards fared fairly well because of that. The frost kind of falls down to the lower levels, and that's what you see on a lot of Cuca Lake wineries. Very steep slopes, old vines as well. We share in the Finger Lakes a lot of the same soil composition: shale, clay, silt, glacial till, as they call it. I think what makes Cuca and Bully Hill unique is that our vines are very old. We've got vines that are 50 plus years old. Vines on Cuca Lake can be up to 150, although they're typically 50 to 20. Older vines and Bully Hill's vines, we kind of focus on keeping our yields low. And that sounds strange. It seems like you'd want to keep your yields high. But in winemaking and for our vineyards, we keep our yields low to about 2 to 3 tons per acre. And we do that to increase the flavor profile of the wine, essentially. Nice bright acidities, nice minerality, and all the terroir itself just contributes to that. It contributes to airflow, contributes to less disease, which means your vines last longer. The longer a vine lasts, essentially, the lower the yield will become, but the better the fruit becomes. So I think that's what makes the west side of Cuca and Bully Hill special.
No, it's great. And speaking of lake effect, Chris, you guys have a unique position in a nascent growing area for winemaking on Lake Ontario. How does it vary and differ from the Finger Lakes and some of what we've just been hearing about Wagner and Bully Hill?
Well, I think it's very similar to what Alex and Will were both speaking to, and Yancey as well, that this terroir, this microclimate that we speak of, it talks about the wind, the rain, the sun, the soil. And Yancey, like you, I was in Rhone, and they talk about the minstrel winds and those beautiful winds that come through the vineyards. You can see the trees even leaning there when you're in Châteauneuf-du-Pape. But we get that same type of lake effect breeze off the lake, and it's just exponentially magnified, I could say, this lake effect. And so we actually have a federal trademark on Lake Effect Vineyard, and we call our vineyard the Lake Effect Vineyard because it's right there on Lake Ontario. The beautiful glacial till soils that we have provide good drainage. We do have clay as well. It's amazing as you go through the vineyard and you can see the different soil particulates as you go through, and these big boulders that we pulled out and made stone walls with as we farmed and ripped the soil to put in the drainage and install the vineyard. So it was a real, it's really wonderful to be able to show the customers and clients who come by these beautiful boulders that came from from this land. This lake effect gives us a blanket of snow, typically in most winters, that keeps the vines protected from winter injury. We grow 100% vinifera here. We have 30 acres planted on a 103-acre estate. We're planted mainly to Riesling. We also grow Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. We've just planted Cabernet Franc and Pinot Gris. So we're excited about those varietals that seem to do very well in the cool climate. And again, the minerality that we get, as Alex was saying, that those wonderful cool nights that happen in the summertime. You'll have a 90-degree day and it'll drop down to 70 degrees at night. And it's kind of like taking the grapes and putting them in the refrigerator overnight. And we get that wonderful expression of acidity from that. And and other wine growing areas don't have that benefit. And the sugars are coming up very quickly, and they lose their acidity, and you can get more of a flabby wine. So I think one of the wonderful expressions of our New York State wines is that freshness and crispness, and it really on the mouth just really is delicious and refreshing.
Super interesting, and I love the fact that you trademarked your name. I mean, listen, not a lot of places can I mean, claim that, and especially you're in this new area on Lake Ontario. I have a question for all you guys, and then let's get started tasting wines. I'm sure people are excited about that. With the rising temperatures in the Finger Lakes, in particular, this is a question from Adele. Are you anticipating more full-bodied reds in the future? And this is, for anyone, certainly for Alex, Will, and Chris.
Yeah, so I think for us the short answer is yes, but I always like to provide more context, because I think sometimes when I just say yes, there's a belief that we're happy about climate change, or that climate change is going to help us in a way. And that's really not the case, because I think what we're seeing is, yes, overall higher growing degree days in a very quick succession, just in terms of year over year, but also very unpredictable weather patterns, which are causing a lot of issues. So we get right around the same amount of rainfall that we normally get year over year, about 35 inches. But instead of that being spread out, that comes, could come, a big good amount of that could come in like a week period, or we could get, 2 inches of rain in an hour, something like that. And depending on the time of year, that can cause a lot of issues. Obviously, where we're located, soil erosion is a big concern. And the other thing I know Will mentioned too, with the frost event, part of what made that frost event so devastating for regions out here, wineries out here, is because we had a stretch of 80-degree weather about a month earlier in March. So the vines woke up earlier than they normally do and started running sap, and started their growth process, started budding. And then that frost really clung to those leaves that had started growing. So again, there is going to be more ripeness to be had in this region as it gets warmer, but it definitely comes with its share of challenges as well. And to say nothing, as we're all wine lovers too, we love other wine regions, and it's really difficult to see, the challenges that they have in places like California, Australia, things like that.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think you make a good point. A lot of people may have seen the 60 Minutes segment from a couple of years ago about how the Midlands of England are starting to have like successful vineyards and winemaking. But they have not yet had, or doesn't seem to affect them yet, with these extreme weather events that can happen out of nowhere, just pop up over the course of a week and drop 12 inches of rain or more on a location. All right, let's get started tasting wines. We're going to start with Yancey and White Cliff Vineyard and Winery. Yancey, we have your Blanc de Blanc, and I want to have you profile the wine, give us some of the tasting notes. But before we even do that, tell us, what does it mean when a wine is called Blanc de Blanc?
It means that it is a white made from white grapes. Blanc means white. And so it's a champagne method, a traditional champagne method wine to use Chardonnay grapes to make a white champagne method. There are Blanc de Noirs, whites made from red grapes, typically Pinot Noir, which where all the color is in the skins in Pinot. And if you press it off and just ferment the juice, you get a white. So that's the
All right.
significance.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you. All right. So this is a wine, it's 100% Chardonnay. Yeah.
Yes.
And it's grown, which of your locations is the fruit from?
It's from the one that's designated as certified sustainable by the new sustainability program out of the Wine and Grape Foundation, which is our home vineyard in Gardner. And we do have quite a lot of Chardonnay here, and have had a lot of success with it over time. And sort of relating to the whole discussion about climate change, and I agree completely with Alex. It's I never joke about how we're going to be making, big reds, and isn't that fun? Because it's horrible swings and extremes is what it really plays out as. But I feel like New York has a good chance to maintain its place as a producer of wines with great acidity. And acidity is just key to quality wines in general, and quality champagnes method wines in particular. You have to start with a very high acid wine. And the grapes are typically picked very early in the season. It's the first thing that we pick is grapes for champagne method, because you want high acid. And it's one of the things that makes this a great product to come out of New York in general, because there's no question about being able to ripen the grapes properly. And we've got the acidity that we need to make a really refreshing, lovely wine.
Yeah. So this is, it's classic method champenoise in terms of the winemaking. And where do you make it?
It's all of our winemaking is done at our Gardner location. We have all of the equipment there, and it is an insanely hands-on process. We are a family scale winery, and very much artisanal, small batch winemaking, and have gotten into the champagne making over a long period of time, figuring it out by making all the mistakes over the years that we could make.
Yeah, and let me jump in here and just say, for those who may not know the ins and outs, making a sparkling wine and making a method champenoise wine, it's a totally different process than making still wine, and it's very involved. It's very labor intensive. It's why champagnes and all sorts of other sparkling wines are typically more expensive. But I'm really impressed, because I know when I first met you guys and started coming to the winery, I don't believe you were yet making a sparkling method champenoise selection. It's a big deal that you are.
I see a question, how long on the lees? The tirage, the aging on, the lees, for those who don't know, it's what we call the yeast, that the yeast eats all the sugar in the juice, and when it's done, it drops to the bottom of the tank, it dies. But it's a key part of champagne making that you age the wine on the lees, and through time, the yeast breaks down and adds those wonderful yeasty flavor notes that are typical of a good champagne. And it was about 2.5 years on the lees. Speaking to that crazy labor intensive process, the worst of it is needing to get the yeast out of the bottle when you're done. And I calculated how many times each of our bottles is handled, and it's about 35 times one of our staff touches one of those bottles. So it is incredible value.
And do you do the traditional like riddling rack, and
Yep,
they're being turned every day?
Yep. That's
wow.
part of the 35.
And obviously, yeah, disgorgement. You probably had a few mishaps during the early times of developing the team's skills, I imagine, in making this.
Yeah, yeah.
I got to tell you, I just tasted it. It's delicious. I
I'm gonna
had
get
it
some
with
too.
your suggestion. I had it with manchego. I have some beautiful manchego cheese here. Oh my goodness, fantastic. Tell us a little
Yeah.
bit about what are the official tasting notes of this wine?
Well, it's, as I say, wonderful kind of yeasty aroma notes come through, and it can go to green apple and even some citrus notes at times. And it is brut technically, so it's less than 0.5% residual sugar added in, not to make it sweet, but to soften the acidity. It just makes for a terrifically refreshing wine. That's I like it with just about everything. I think food wise, it goes with. It's hard to think of something it doesn't go with, as far as I'm concerned. My husband's favorite pairings are seafood, oysters, and sushi. And I was amused to ask our winemaker what he likes to drink it with, and he actually said steak, which
Steak.
is not remotely traditional, but it's a good
No.
example of it's just being a wonderful wine that you can enjoy with just about anything.
You could have this with you could have this with a spaghetti carbonara. You could also have it with a white pizza, like a quattro formaggi, or like a white pizza with mushrooms and spinach. It's delicious. And you're running a promotion right now
Yes.
for around 24 hours. There's a 10% off. Is there any coupon code, or you just go to the website and you can get it for 10% off?
The next 24 hours, you won't see that $35 pricing on the website. It's just below $30 for the next 24 hours for anyone who wants to go online and order this. And it is also for anyone who happens to be in the New York City area. It's actually sprinkled through the city, and it's at Flatiron Wines, which is a wonderful wine store. It's on the Upper East Side at East Side Cellars, and it's in Long Island City at Court Square Wines.
Excellent. Congratulations. Big deal.
Thank you.
This is a big accomplishment, and the wine is spectacular.
We make it because we love to drink it.
Well, that's the best kind. All right, so we're going to move on to wine number 2, which is the 2021 Coloca Lake Effect Vineyard Pinot Noir Reserve. Dr. Chris, tell us a little bit about. I mean, this is quite an ambitious and aspirational endeavor to make a Pinot Noir on the East Coast.
People say that growing Pinot's tough. That came from Sideways, the movie. I don't think it's any more prone to disease than any of the other grapes are. We've been fortunate. This fruit ripens up. You pull the clusters off, and the hardest thing is to keep the pickers from eating the fruit, because it tastes like blueberries. It's just absolutely delicious. So we have a harvest festival. We invite our friends, family, and neighbors to come over and pick. 50 people show up. We pick the Chardonnay and the Pinot Noir. It's all hand picked. We teach them how to pick so they don't cut their fingers, and then we throw a beautiful brunch for them with a white linen tablecloth out amongst the vines, and we put out some cheeses and quiche and barbecue chicken and all of our wines, and after about a half hour, people realize that they're actually doing free labor. But they get lunch, and everybody has a great time. We bring that fruit in. We de-stem and we crush. We let it ferment in vats for about 3 weeks. We punch down twice a day. And then once we press, we go right into these 500-liter French barriques, and they're used. I bought some new ones, but I like to use the new ones for Chardonnay. And then they move into becoming Pinot Noir barriques. You can always go from red to white barrels, but not the other way around. And what emerges is this beautiful, silky Burgundian style Pinot Noir.
Yeah. No, it's got great balance. terrific texture and mouthfeel. And it's light. I don't have the bottle in front of me, but what's the ABV? What's the alcohol percentage on this one?
Yeah, this is only 11.8%. So
Yeah,
it
so
is
it's
light.
very light. This is a super drinkable and very delicious Pinot Noir. I love the texture. I love the mouthfeel and the balance on this wine.
Well,
Really nice.
thanks.
Very light.
Thanks, Sam. Well, it indeed goes through mallow, and that's what's giving you some of that rounded mouthfeel and softness that you're getting on the palate. It's a silky, sexy wine. It's perfect for Valentine's Day along those lines. And we pick at about 21, 22 bricks. We're picking the Pinot Noir. We're not getting it 25, 26 bricks like they might in the Willamette Valley of Oregon. But again, when you taste this, it's truly a Burgundian style. And I think it's an eloquent wine. It's I think more and more, I mean, even my own palate, I used to love those huge Napa Reds, those big punch you in the face Shirazes from Australia. And now I'm 55 and I have a whole cellar full of those wines, and I'm looking more for more delicate, softer wines. So anyway, I'll probably have to find somebody to have to trade with.
Yeah, no, this is a really nice one. And for those of you who are like me or just wild about the cheese and the wine pairing, at your suggestion, Chris, I combined this with a really nice sheep's milk cheese. We have a terrific cheese shop in my town, and that I picked up today, and it's a great pairing with the sheep's milk cheese. This one is great as an aperitif, good for like before dinner or appetizers, but it's also great with the meal. So I think it's really versatile, which is kudos to you guys.
Well, thanks. The wine has gotten kudos. We make two styles or from two different blocks. We always sell out of our own Lake Effect Vineyard Pinot Noir, so we've now labeled that as reserve, and we're sourcing Pinot Noir from the Finger Lakes from growers there and making it in the same style, but putting Finger Lakes on the label. Our Pinot Noir has won top scores at the New York International Wine Competition, and we were just recently featured in the Robb Report. So we're really excited about this wine and the others.
That's great, and it is unusual still to this day. It is. I also own a wine retail store. It is unusual to find a Pinot Noir on the East Coast that you can really stand behind and get excited about. And most of the good ones are coming from other regions, but this is right up there with them.
Well, thank you, and I also think, Sam, that because we're new, again, the Oregon Pinots you're seeing now are in the $45 to $70 range for reasonably priced, and I'm talking reasonably priced wines. This wine retails for $37.95, and we're running a special for our viewers at $29.95 on the website, just in case they'd like to give it a shot.
I mean, listen, the Santa Barbara wineries should be sending gifts and checks to Paul Giamatti, because I mean, I have a Santa Barbara Pinot in my store in Greenport that's great. It's $73 a bottle.
Yeah.
I mean, hello.
Yeah. So, exactly. Well, I think where we are in the upstate New York region, if you look economy of scale, we don't have the same household revenues as incomes as San Francisco or other parts of the country. So certainly the New Yorkers are used to higher price wines, but I think that's a wonderful benefit of our New York State wine industry, is you're getting fabulous value for very high quality wines and people that really care about the wines.
Chris, you and I need to executive produce a film about Pinot Noirs, good ones on the East Coast, release it and try to get Hollywood to pick it up. And if it happens, it'll blow up. The East Coast, you'll be selling these things for $85 a bottle.
Deal.
So, all right. So we're wine number 3. Alex, you mentioned 3 wonderful selections from your portfolio for Valentine's, but we're going to focus on the Meritage, which is a Bordeaux blend. Very elegant wine, quite a lot of structure and body. Tell us a little bit about the genesis of this wine. Like, how did it come about, and how's it done for you guys? How's it been received by your wine club and your fans?
Yeah, definitely. I want to go back in time quite a bit, and I love when there's these little kind of synchronicities. So as Will was bringing up how Cuca and Seneca connect, there's a lot of connection with the Wagner family and the Taylor family. So Wagner Vineyards, before the Wagners had Wagner Vineyards and just owned vineyards, we just grew grapes and sold them to the Taylor Wine Company, all French American hybrid varieties. And when we opened our doors in 1979, we had started to plant some vinifera, and there, I'll yada yada some political stuff. But so when Taylor was then owned by a large soda company, one of the French American hybrids that we grew quite a bit of, called Deschanac, which is a red hybrid grape, they opted not to use it anymore, and the market completely tanked on Deschanac, and we had acres upon acres. We still have some, but Bill Wagner, who is our current owner, John Wagner's father, and was the founder of the winery, tore out a lot of that Deschanac, and in its place planted the 3 Bordeaux red varieties of Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, and Cabernet Franc. And over the past 40 years or so, there's been a lot of learning. It's been a very steep learning curve when it comes to growing these 3 varietals and ripening them. We've seen the most success on Cabernet Franc from a year-over-year consistency, and that is why we now have 28 acres of Cabernet Franc. And that's why we make a rosé from it, varietal Cabernet Franc, and so forth. But in those years where you get that sunlight and you get dryness, and you, especially in the harvest season, and you're able to hang that fruit long and extend that ripening, you get Cabernet Sauvignon and Merlot as well that really can come together and create this wonderful Bordeaux blend. So for this particular wine, it is 45% Cabernet Sauvignon, 38% Cabernet Franc, 17% Merlot. And that'll vary depending on the vintage when we make it. We don't make this wine in every vintage because not every vintage is going to be ripe enough and have the quality of fruit for this wine. But 2020 was that year. I like to call it the silver lining vintage because not a whole lot else in the world went right in 2020. It's kind of why we're all so comfortable on Zoom right now, is because of what happened in 2020. But what happened out in the vineyard was pretty magical. And you know, this wine, when we do make it, is not usually typically ones that we showcase in this type of event because we make it in such small allotments in our wine club and our customers eat it up so quickly. But because we knew 2020 was so special, we made about 3 times as much of this wine as we typically do when we make a Meritage. I see the question there from Mark, are we a member of the Meritage Alliance? And we are. So basically what that is we pay to be able to use Meritage on the label with the agreement that we will only make it in years that the grapes are ripe enough. So just off the top of my head, we made it in 2019, 16, 12, and then 07. So, you know, like I said, it's not every year. It's not even every other year. But the way that this wine is just continuing to evolve, it was I give our winemaking team, we have 2 winemakers, Kevin Lee and Jess Johnson. I give them a ton of credit because I was knocking down the door asking, when can we release this wine? And they kept tasting it and say, it's not ready. It's not ready. We got to wait. We got to wait. And once it released, it was ready to go. Everybody's loved it. I mean, we've gotten a lot of great compliments on it, and yeah, we still got quite a bit. So you can see right there, retails at $29.99, which in my complete unbiased opinion is an absolute steal. And then I would also mention we do have a Valentine's promotion running right now on our Cabernet Franc, which is actually, you save $15 on shipping if your order includes a case of Cabernet Franc of our rosé, which our rosé price is actually marked down as well too. So if you go to WagnerVineyards.com, you can get all the details on that sale, but grab some of the Meritage as well because it's going to pair deliciously with, you know, what you got cooking, hopefully on Valentine's Day.
Alex, this is a really well-crafted New York State red wine. And I mean, it lives up to the promise of, you know, it says on the back of the bottle, it's a Bordeaux blend. It lives up to the promise of being a Bordeaux blend. It is a legit Bordeaux blend style wine, and really nice balance, good texture, super food friendly. I mean, I paired it with Parmigiano Reggiano from the same cheese shop. Super, super nice pairing. I mean, this is a really high quality red. And for the person who asked the question, I think it was Adele, about reds coming out of New York State. You know, this is already happening. This type of wine is already happening in New York State. And so I love this one. This is a super food friendly selection that could go great with the Valentine celebration or really anything. What's your favorite dish to pair this one with, Alex?
Filet mignon. I gotta go filet. Just the silkiness of the steak with kind of the velvety tannin that you get on this, with a little bit of that grippiness. But really, I mean, if you got a portobello mushroom or a heartier pasta, red sauce pasta dish, I think you know, it would pair phenomenally. And the one thing I'll bring up too, we talked about, you know, these kind of never before seen levels of ripeness. It's still a 13.2% alcohol wine. I mean, there's other wine regions that would, you know, kill for anything under 14 right now. So the idea, you know, that as more and more people think more about alcohol percentage, things like that, we do ship to New Jersey. I see that question coming in. You know, at the end of the day, we're still talking about wines that you can enjoy a couple glasses of.
Yeah, no, this is a really nice one. This is a good wine to get a few bottles, keep in the house, and then when some friends show up, you know, impromptu unannounced, this is one you can pull out and have with informal gathering and food or formal.
But cover up the Finger Lakes. I'd be in port for somebody and ask them where it's from. I'd be curious to know what they say.
How's it been received to the wine club? I mean, is it like your fans and the faithful at Wagner? Has it been well received?
Oh yeah, it is, and we've actually started doing more library tastings because we've been holding back cases over the years, and so we'll revisit the 2016 and see how that's aged after a couple of years, and it's phenomenal. I think, you know, it's one of those things where a lot of the wine club and a lot of people will say, you know, you should be charging double. You know, how are you making money charging this much? But you know, it's been a family philosophy, and I know it's a philosophy of a lot of folks out here in New York to over deliver on value. Because I think it's one of those things like, hey, we're all, you know, family owned, operated wineries. We want people to enjoy this. We don't want price to be a barrier from people enjoying great wine.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, the speaking of price, the Cabernet Franc Rosé that's really a great deal right now. It's $13.99, I believe.
Yep. So down from $15.99. And like I said, if you have 12 of those in your order, you'll get $15 off shipping.
Excellent. All right, Will, let's round third base and head home. We're gonna taste this wonderful sweet rosé.
Yes.
This would go with the end of your meal, for example. It could be an aperitif, but I see it really as a nice coda at the end of a great dinner.
Absolutely.
So the Bully Hill Sweet Walter Rosé, which also is a great deal right now. Tell us a little bit about this grapes. What's the composition of the Sweet Walter Rosé, and what are the tasting notes and a particular good pairing of food with it?
Sure. Yeah, this is a really unique wine, but it's not really that much of a new wine. Sweet Walter Rosé is essentially a Catawba blend. If you don't know Catawba is essentially the most important wine grape in the Northeast. It really kickstarted America's wine industry on the Northeast. Basically started our love of sparkling wines, not only in the Ohio region, but also in the Finger Lakes region. We started making sparkling wines out of Catawba. People realized it made a nice rosé, and I'm talking about turn of the century wine styles from the Finger Lakes. Pink Catawba itself had this great run as the signature rosé for a lot of the 20th century in the Finger Lakes. It kind of fell out of fashion around the 1980s and 90s. People started discontinuing their pink Catawbas, and they started transitioning towards vinifera and French hybrid based wines. Somewhere in the 2000s, we decided to re-release a pink Catawba, and we found it did really well. We had this wine called Sweetwater Red, which became one of our biggest sellers. And this is a lusciously sweet red. We decided, let's try to make a rosé out of it. We decided to use Catawba because it was doing so well in the market. What we found was there wasn't enough Catawba to make two of these wines, so we actually had to discontinue our pink Catawba to focus on the Sweetwater Rosé, which is essentially Catawba, Vidal, and Seyval. And the Catawba is a fascinating grape because it is indigenous to the Northeast. It's one of the only wine grapes where you're going to find true wild strawberry fruit character, true watermelon fruit character. And this means that this wine will exhibit flavors of watermelon and wild strawberries. And also you'll get an aroma of rose in it. It's a fascinating wine to anybody who's never had it, or to somebody who thinks that it's too old-fashioned to have. Buying a bottle of Sweetwater Rosé, serving it well chilled with the right cheese, the right dessert, I think will change people's minds about what is possible from these indigenous Native American varieties, or as I like to call them, heirloom varieties to the Northeast.
Yeah, I mean, I just put a question in the chat about how many people have had Catawba. It's not a well-known grape outside of its native regions.
Yeah.
But like other, there's Cayuga, there's other grapes from the Finger Lakes region in upstate New York that are fantastic. And, as I like to say, we Americans are relatively boring. We drink the same, 4 or 5 grapes, whether it's Pinot Noir, they're all vinifera, Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, Sauvignon Blanc, Cabernet Sauvignon, etc. Get outside your comfort zone and try grape. There's 5,000 wine grapes in the world.
Exactly.
Catawba is one of them, and you have, this is a delicious, sweet, dessert-esque wine that, I don't want to blaspheme here, but if you've ever had a really good Sauterne, or if you've had Chateau d'Yquem, this is a New York State's version of that wine that goes great with cheese, goes great with dessert or the end of the meal. There's a lot to recommend in this wine, and I imagine it does very well for you guys at Bully Hill.
It is actually right now, it's our fastest selling wine, meaning that its arc is continually rising. I think it was surprising. I think we released it to round out the portfolio. We had a Sweetwater Red, did very well. We had a Sweetwater White, and we said, let's try a rosé. What we're finding is this wine sells extremely well. And seems to just year after year, people get more and more excited about it. It's fascinating, Catawba actually, it's a wild hybrid, and through SSR analysis, they have found it has some Semillon parentage in it. So it does have the classic white Bordeaux grape inside of it, which is the classic sweet wine of Bordeaux. And I just think the fruit characteristic is so fascinating and in such a contrast to a lot of other wines. And I think the price reflects that. Catawba is a big producer. It can produce, 3 to 4 to 5 times the amount that Pinot Noir or Chardonnay can. So therefore you can charge a lot less for it. And for me, the more I learn about wine, I learn that wine's really about context. You're not going to have this wine with a steak But when are you going to have this wine? It pairs deliciously with things like strawberry shortcake, cheesecake, stuffed French toast, crepes, cannolis, blintzes. But it also does very well with anything that goes brunch, chicken and waffles, eggs Benedict, anything that has that nice sweet, savory character. The high acidity of Catawba balances really well with the lusciously sweet style here. And the Vidal and the Saval, they kind of give it a little bit more backbone, and they give it a little bit more finesse to hold up that fruit. If it was 100% Catawba, it might be too grapey. And the Vidal and the Saval give it just a little bit more elegance, a little bit more finesse. And although it's lusciously sweet, you will find that it's very well balanced, and it has a nice clean finish. It's a really fascinating kind of fun wine. And yeah, we hope more people can kind of, like you said, loosen up a little bit and try different and new wine grapes. In this case, an older wine grape from New York State and the Northeast. Yeah, really nice.
Yeah, no, it's listen, this is my first time I tasted it, and I love it. It's I had no idea what to expect. And it's also a great deal right now. If anybody's
Yeah.
stocking up on having something like this in their wine cellar, this is a good time to pick it up. We had a couple of things in the chat, Will, one of which was related to pairing with desserts.
Mhm.
What's your favorite dessert to pair with this? Somebody suggested, I think it was Cheryl suggested chocolate mousse.
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah, it does, like I said, there's three flavors in the Sweetwater Rosé, essentially. There is watermelon, cherry, and wild strawberry, I would call it. Chocolate mousse sounds delicious with it. When I'm thinking of dessert with Sweetwater Rosé, I'm thinking of something with cream. So I'm really liking the strawberry shortcake, cherry pie a la mode, things like that, kind of quintessential American desserts. But Valentine's Day red velvet cake is also that creamy, the creaminess of the frosting with the cake, same kind of flavors is going to go really good. Yeah, it's a unique flavor profile, but one I think that more people are going to start enjoying.
I had it with, and for those of you who are following me down the primrose path of cheese and wine, I've had it this evening with a triple creme brie.
Nice.
It was great.
Yeah.
And the baguette, the fresh baguette was excellent.
Yeah. One of the first times I had brie, when I was younger, someone said, "Let's go to the store. We'll get some brie." And I said, "What's brie?" And this is like, "Oh, it's this very unique, very creamy cheese. It's a little astringent." We got baguette and we got grapes. So we had grapes, brie, and baguette, and you can see where the Sweetwater Rosé exhibiting this grapey flavor is going to pair really well and cut through the astringency of the brie.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, guys, I want to thank you for doing this. All four of you. It's amazing to have such great wineries and representatives thereof in one session. I want to show on screen just quickly for anybody who wants to see it again. Let's take a look at how we can get these wines. Anybody interested? So we have the White Cliff Vineyard and Winery North River, Blanc de Blanc, which is at White Cliff Wine, and no promo code needed. Just go there, and it is on sale currently. This is a great proxy for that overpriced champagne you might be thinking of getting for Valentine's Day. Here's the 2021 Coloca Lake Effect Vineyard Pinot Noir Reserve. Love this for all the reasons we talked about when we tasted it, and Chris did a great job of representing the how and the why of this Pinot Noir from the East Coast. And then, of course, for the main event, for the main course, we have the Wagner Vineyards 2020 Meritage, and also on sale right now. While you're there, take a minute. We've got that Valentine's Rosé of Cabernet Franc, so that's a great pickup this week too. And then we have the sweet Walter. This is a head turner. We've never had a wine like this on this broadcast before, and it's a lot of fun to introduce something this new and different, and get us out of our comfort zone. So with that, I want to say to you guys, and thank you everybody for tuning in. I'd like to end with a tribute about New York wines and New York State wineries and wine growers, that I think is very apt and appropriate for our discussion tonight. And I will read it to you here. It reads as such. We were never supposed to make it big. We could easily move and grow in perfect conditions, but in New York State, we didn't have those conditions. We leaned into adversity and came together as a family to make something out of nothing. Our future is not in its customers, growers, and our members. It's full and by the people. Our collaborative ethos is irreverent and in and of itself. We're an intrepid band of outsiders, and we're in this together, a family, and we believe in what we do. I want to thank Yancey and Will and Alex and Chris for being a part of this. So great to have you guys in one place. I know we ran over by a few minutes, but we had so much interesting information to cover and great wines to talk about. I want to wish everyone a wonderful and happy Valentine's, and happy wine tasting. And we'll see you soon with another broadcast about some fun wines and great winemakers. So with that,
Cheers.
good evening and good night.
Cheers. Thank
Thanks
you.
so much,
everyone.
Sam.
Cheers.
Thanks so much, Sam.
All right, take care now.